Before we begin today's story, take a quick second to support the channel. If you enjoy deep, emotional stories filled with suspense, secrets, and complicated human relationships, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next confession. Every story shared here explores the hidden corners of human choices, the moments when emotions, temptation, and consequences collide. Now, let me tell you about a time when something that seemed insignificant slowly turned into something I could no longer ignore. At first, I convinced myself it meant absolutely nothing. Just a moment. 3 seconds, maybe less. A passing glance. An illusion created by boredom or an overactive imagination. The kind of thing people dismiss without a second thought. But the strange thing about moments like that is how they linger. Days passed, yet the memory of that brief moment stayed with me. I tried to brush it aside and bury it beneath routine, morning coffee, small conversations, everyday responsibilities, but it remained somewhere in the back of my mind. Because once I noticed it, I began noticing him. His presence inside the house was impossible to ignore after that. He had only been staying with us temporarily, but somehow the energy of the entire house seemed to shift around him. It wasn't loud or obvious. In fact, most people probably wouldn't have sensed it at all. But I did. Every movement he made seemed intentional. Controlled. Even the way he walked through the hallway or leaned against a wall carried a strange kind of quiet confidence. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't paying attention, I would catch him looking at me. Not the casual glance people exchange in conversation. Something longer. Something quieter. Something that made the air feel heavier than it should have. At first, I told myself it meant nothing. But eventually, I realized the truth was far more complicated. Because the worst part wasn't that he looked. The worst part was that sometimes I looked back. The first time I truly felt the tension between us, it happened in the kitchen. It was an ordinary morning. The kind of morning that usually passes without memory. I was preparing coffee, moving slowly through the quiet routine of the house. The kettle hissed softly. Sunlight crept through the window. Everything felt normal. Until I noticed him standing there. He leaned casually against the kitchen counter, arms folded across his chest as if he had been there for a while. I hadn't even heard him enter the room. "What are you doing up so early?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Could ask you the same thing," he replied. His voice was calm, almost amused. I poured coffee into 2 cups, mostly to give my hands something to do. But even as I moved around the kitchen, I could feel his eyes on me. Not in a rude way. Not even in an obvious way. But in a way that made silence feel strangely loud. "You're staring," I said finally, half joking. He didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled slightly. "Maybe I'm just observing." I tried to laugh it off, but something about the way he said it sent a small chill down my spine. Because it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like he meant every word. Later that afternoon, my husband called from his office. Work had been consuming his life for months. Late nights, endless meetings, business trips that stretched for days. At first, I had tried to be understanding. But loneliness has a way of growing quietly over time. "Looks like I'll be working late again," he said through the phone. I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "That's okay," I told him. But even as I said the words, I knew they sounded hollow. After we hung up, I stood there for a moment, staring at the silent phone in my hand. That was when I heard a voice behind me. "Your lack of surprise is interesting." I turned around quickly. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "How long were you standing there?" I asked. "Long enough." I felt my stomach tighten. "That conversation wasn't your business." He shrugged. "Maybe not. But it says a lot." "About what?" "About how used you've become to being alone." The words hit harder than I expected. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt exposed. "I think you should go out tonight," I told him suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "Go out?" "With friends," I said quickly. "Have fun. Do something." It felt like the safest solution. Distance. Space. Something to stop whatever strange tension had begun growing between us. For a moment he didn't respond. Then he laughed quietly. You're trying to send me away. I'm trying to help you enjoy your stay. He studied my face carefully. Or maybe, he said slowly, you're trying to avoid something. My breath caught slightly. That's ridiculous. Is it? The way he looked at me made it difficult to hold his gaze. I turned away. But he stepped closer. Not too close. Just close enough for the tension between us to feel impossible to ignore. You know what I think, he said softly. I don't think you want me to leave. After that conversation, I did everything possible to avoid him. I filled my days with errands, grocery shopping, cleaning, phone calls with friends I hadn't spoken to in months. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Anything to avoid being alone in the same room with him again. But avoidance is a fragile strategy when you share the same house. Eventually, our paths crossed again. And when they did, it happened at the worst possible moment. One evening, just after sunset, I stepped outside to clear my head. The air was cool, quiet. For the first time that day, I felt like I could breathe. Then I saw him. He was in the backyard under the dim glow of the outdoor lights, practicing a workout routine. His movements were slow and controlled, muscles shifting beneath his skin as he moved through each motion with focus. I froze for a moment, not because I wanted to watch, but because I didn't want him to notice that I had. Unfortunately, he already had. Without turning around, he spoke. You don't have to hide, you know. I felt heat rise to my face. I wasn't hiding. Of course not. Now he turned, grabbing a towel and wiping sweat from his shoulders. Then he looked directly at me. So why do you keep running away? I'm not running. Then stay. The word hung in the air between us. Stay. A simple request. Yet somehow it felt incredibly complicated. I knew I should leave. Every instinct told me walking back into the house was the smartest choice. But my feet refused to move. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was the unsettling realization that someone had finally noticed the emptiness I had been pretending didn't exist. He stepped closer. Not aggressively. Not even intentionally. But close enough that the distance between us felt fragile. This isn't a game, I said quietly. I know, he replied. His voice had changed. It was calmer now. More serious. That's why it's dangerous. My heart began beating faster. Then stop, I whispered. But even as the word left my mouth, I knew it wasn't a command. It sounded more like a plea. Just then, thunder rolled across the sky. Dark clouds gathered quickly above us. Within seconds, the first drops of rain began falling. The moment shattered. Reality rushed back all at once. This can't happen, I said quickly, stepping away. He didn't try to stop me. But his eyes said everything words didn't. Because deep down we both knew something had already changed. I hurried back into the house, closing the door behind me as the rain began pounding against the windows. Inside my room, I pressed my hand against my lips, trying to steady my breathing. My thoughts raced in every direction. Anger, confusion, guilt, and beneath all of it, a truth I didn't want to face. Part of me had wanted to stay in that moment. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, the memory replayed. His voice, his expression, the way the air between us had felt electric and fragile at the same time. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just tension. Just imagination. But even lies lose their power after being repeated too many times. Because by morning, I knew one thing for certain. Avoiding him would no longer be enough. Something had begun. And whether I liked it or not, the situation was already far more complicated than I had ever intended. The next morning, I walked downstairs slowly. Part of me hoped the kitchen would be empty. It wasn't. He was already there, sitting quietly at the table, a cup of coffee in his hands, waiting. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than any conversation could have been. Finally, he broke it. You stood your ground last night. I stared into my coffee cup. There was nowhere else to go. A slow smile appeared on his face. Are you sure about that? His words sent a small chill through me. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't talking about the backyard. He was talking about us. About the invisible line we kept pretending didn't exist. and the frightening possibility that sooner or later, one of us might cross it. If you made it this far into the story, thank you for listening. Stories like this reveal how quickly ordinary moments can evolve into situations filled with emotional complexity and difficult choices. If you enjoy stories of secrets, tension, and unexpected confessions, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones people are almost afraid to tell.